Hello, and welcome to the Northwest Naturalist Notebook. I'm your host, Kirsten Croswell. Today's episode, we're going to look at nature journaling. What is it, and why I think you should give it a try? So, let's jump in. As a naturalist, I love to explore the outdoors here in the Pacific Northwest. But unfortunately, my brain can't hold everything that I learn. And while guidebooks can be a phenomenal resource, having a tool like a nature journal gives me a space to put my learnings, my wonderings, and the incredible things that I've seen. A nature journal allows us a space to be curious, a space to explore our creativity and to challenge ourselves in new ways, and to record the connections that we're making with our local ecosystems and the world around us. One of the things that's amazing about nature journaling is that there's no right way to do it. If I were to ask a room of 100 nature journalers what it meant, I would likely get 100 different answers, which is part of the beauty of the practice. Now, I would argue there are four main parts that you're going to see as part of the nature journal as a whole. So let's look at what those might be. I should also say that my understanding of nature journaling and what it can involve has changed a lot over time. I initially believed that it meant we had to go outdoors, but we'll talk more about that in a little bit. First, the four main pieces or basics of nature journaling are that we observe, write, number, and sketch. Let's look at each of these a little more closely. Any nature journal entry is going to start with observations, which means we need to take time to be present and to really notice what's around us. I recommend connecting this with our five senses. Most often, we think of what do we see? Is there a particular bird or plant, or is the weather a specific way? But it's also important to think about our other senses too. Like, what do we hear? Is there a sound of moving water, a bird's song, or maybe something unexpected? We can also use senses like touch, smell, or even taste if it's safe to do so. But it's always best to err on the side of caution and make sure we're 100% sure what we're observing if we use those senses. The next step we might take in our nature journal is to write and to describe what it is we observed. We might also label features, add a title, or even engage in some more involved formats, like writing a poem or story that's inspired by what we've seen. We could connect with past experiences we've had, or even one of my favorite practices, ask questions that come to mind as we make our observations. Remember, it's always okay to come back and add to your entry later. Next is the power of numbers. This is one that's especially important if you're a community scientist. Taking the time to count, how many are there? And to record exactly what they are if we're able to tell. It can also be helpful to take measurements using the length, height, weight, temperature, time, angle, or volume whenever possible. And it's great in the field to include units if you have a measuring tool. Once we've collected these numbers, we can always organize them into a table or graph. This will give us more information like the frequency or how many of something we saw altogether. We can do stem and leaf plots, bar graphs, histograms, or line graphs that can help us understand the relationships between these numbers that we've collected. Last, we have sketch. Now, when a lot of people think of nature journals, they oftentimes think of it as a form of art, which for some people is how they use it. But a nature journal is so much more than that. We can include everything from a quick sketch to get the general shape of things or where they might be located, all the way to detailed drawings, which will take more time. Other ways to include visuals or sketches in our journals include creating a map of where we've traveled that day or over an experience. We can add color to help us have a more clear understanding of our observation, or even play around with different media like pencil, ink, gouache, watercolor, and more. When we observe, write, number, and sketch about what we're seeing in nature, we are nature journaling. A nature journal is designed to be our space to reflect on and record our learnings about the world around us. Entries can be really short, maybe a few sentences or a small sketch, or they can take several pages to reflect on an experience. Each entry is going to be unique in its own way. Over the last few years, we've been spending a lot more time in front of our computers. For me, nature journaling has provided me an opportunity to get outside with more intention, to spend even a few minutes looking at the plants that are growing around me or paying closer attention to the birds that make their homes near my own. It doesn't have to be fancy, maybe 5 minutes on a lunch break or before heading inside for the day. All it needs is something to record with and something to record on. It could be as simple as a piece of paper and something to write with, though you can definitely explore more involved options if you'd like. As with any habit, it requires that we keep coming back to it. A few minutes a day adds up to lots and lots of pencil miles over time, and our journal can allow us to track our progress and what we've learned. Let me show you a few pages of my own. Depending on the type of media you'd like to experiment with, is going to determine what type of journal might work best for you. Certain papers work well with different types of media. Some are designed for pencil, while others work better with watercolor. I typically choose mixed media paper to give me options. You can see in my journal, I've added a pocket made from a note card to the front where I can keep measuring tools like this one to carry into the field. It takes up very little space, and then I know I have it with me wherever I go. For my journal pages themselves, sometimes it's a space for me to explore or practice certain skills. Or to maybe try out a new form of media like ink. It can be used to capture information and observations from a trip, like the landscapes of John Day. A reflection on a citizen science project. Some entries might be an opportunity to experiment with trying to capture something in more detail, like specific fungus that we found near where we live, or collecting data about birds that we've encountered and where we found them. It could be from a specific nature journaling outing, even with another group of people. You can see I've got measurements, connections between information, and even other things that I've observed. I don't have to draw all of it, but it still gives me a sense of what I've encountered. You can use strategies like boxes, titles, labels to help highlight certain information and make it easier to find later on. Information like metadata can tell you where you were, when you were there, and what the conditions were like at that time. This also provides you interesting information as a naturalist. We can use strategies like graphs and maps to help us track information. And these can also be used with apps like eBird or iNaturalist to help connect and share the data with other people. Maybe an entry is focused on telling a story or looking at lots of different observations, or instead focusing in on specific species. It could be focused on a visit to a garden, a particular park, or the interesting species we find along the way. We could even include opportunities like classes or meetups with other nature journalers. It can include a detailed look or more general observations. Some could be quick sketches to capture remembered details, or a more detailed look at a specific species and what we've learned about it. Because every nature journaler is unique, our journeys are unique as well. We're not all aiming for the same destination. Each of us is going to see and notice different things about the world around us. That's one of the amazing things about nature journaling and connecting with others in the community, is that we're able to learn from one another. It's not about having a perfect, pretty picture or botanical illustration. It's about making meaningful connection, recording what we notice, what our questions are, and the connections we make as individuals. It's not always going to be the same and is certainly not only for professionals. Nature journaling is for everyone. And remember, nature journaling doesn't have to be done outside. Sometimes there are fascinating living things inside our own home. Maybe a bouquet of flowers from a recent holiday, or maybe that food item you left a little too long could be a great opportunity to learn from the world around you. We also can use tech resources to help as well. There's a number of bird cams, like those from the Cornell lab, or a number of zoos around the world that allow us to observe animals we otherwise might not have the opportunity to see and learn from. In our increasingly busy world, taking a few minutes to get outside can have incredible benefits for us. It improves our mood, lowers our blood pressure, and even boosts our immune systems. With a practice like nature journaling, we also have a way to connect with our environments over time. So I would challenge you to go out, find something to write with, find something to write on, and spend 5 minutes, maybe once this week, maybe once a day, and just jot down a few notes about what you see. Think about the role that writing, numbers, and sketches can play in helping you record what you encounter. And if you're feeling really up to it, I encourage you to take some time to share this with others around you, whether that's in person or in one of the online nature journaling communities. If you're an experienced nature journaler, I would challenge you to go maybe explore a new nature nook in your neighborhood or try a new media that you haven't before. Interested in learning more about nature journaling? Stay tuned to this page for future updates and videos as we dive more into this incredible practice, or check out my blog at northwestnaturalistnotebook.com for resources and more information. Until next time, this is Kirsten, the Northwest Naturalist, wishing you all happy exploring.